Before we dive into this wild tale of danger, betrayal, and an unexpected kiss that changed everything, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and share this video with someone who loves a good cowboy story. And don't forget to drop a comment telling us your favorite moment once we're done. Now saddle up, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a collision of survival and fate out on the open range. A rancher pushed off a cliff, a mysterious stranger who saved him, and a kiss he never saw coming. Let's get started. The wind rolled across the plains with a restless urgency, the kind that made even seasoned cowboys lift their heads and listen. Colt Maddox rode hard across the open stretch, his horse kicking up clouds of dust as the sun bled orange behind him. He wasn't out for leisure. He was chasing the trail of a predator that had been haunting his herd for 2 nights straight. The tracks were fresh, too fresh, and something in the air made his instincts tighten like a pulled rope. Trouble was close. He could feel it crawling under his skin. Colt guided his horse toward Buckthorn Ridge, a narrow path snaking between jagged cliffs. A man didn't ride here unless he had good reason or no fear. Colt had both. He scanned the ground, eyes sharp, jaw set, tracking every paw print pressed into the dirt. Then he stopped. The tracks changed, heavier stride, deeper impressions, like the animal had been startled. Before he could read more, a soft rustle came from ahead. Not an animal, a person. Colt reached for his rifle as a silhouette stepped into view. A woman emerged with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where she stood. She wasn't lost, wasn't wandering. She was waiting. Her dark hair was tied back, her boots worn, and her posture firmer than the rocks around her. Colt didn't lower his rifle and she didn't flinch. There was something unsettling about that balance. Most folks tensed up looking down a barrel. She seemed amused. "Trails closed," Colt called out. She raised an eyebrow. "Didn't see your name carved on the dirt." Her voice was steady, unshaken, almost taunting. Colt narrowed his eyes. Strangers weren't common this deep into ranch land, especially alone, especially unbothered. "This is Maddox territory," he warned. She gave him a long, deliberate look, then nodded at the ground beneath his horse. "Then maybe mend your territory before it breaks your neck." Colt didn't understand until the earth beneath him groaned like a dying animal. He barely had time to shift his weight before the ridge trembled. Rocks cracked, dirt split, his horse reared. And in one brutally fast moment, Colt Maddox went over the edge. The fall wasn't long, but it was violent. Colt hit the slope hard, rolled, slammed into rock, and everything went red. For a heartbeat, he fought the drop with sheer instinct, grabbing at anything, everything. His fingers caught a dead root, but it tore free instantly. He was slipping toward the ravine, toward certain death, when a hand shot out from above. Strong fingers wrapped around his wrist. A grunt, a pull, the kind of strength born from desperation or pure stubbornness. Colt didn't know how she held him, but she did. And then the world went black. When he blinked awake hours later, the sky was darker and a faint fire crackled beside him. He tried moving, but pain knifed through his ribs. A shadow leaned over him. The same woman. Colt glared up instinctively, but the firelight softened her features, revealing a face equal parts fierce and calm. She pressed a hand against his shoulder. "Don't move, you took a nasty tumble," Colt scoffed. "I didn't ask for your help." She smirked, tightening the bandage on his arm. "You weren't in a position to ask for anything." Colt scanned their makeshift camp, his hat placed neatly near the fire, his wounds cleaned, his horse tethered safely nearby. She had patched him up, tended the fire, prevented him from freezing or bleeding out. He didn't like feeling helpless in front of a stranger. "Why'd you save me?" he asked, voice low and rough. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she dipped a rag into water and wiped the dirt from his jaw with a care that confused him. "Because letting a man die when I can stop it doesn't sit right with me," she finally said, "even if he's rude." He opened his mouth to snap back, but she leaned closer, checking the cut across his forehead. Her fingers brushed his skin, gentle, precise, unexpectedly warm. Colt's breath hitched. He wasn't used to anyone touching him like that, let alone a stranger who felt more like a challenge than a savior. She tilted his chin slightly, studying him with quiet intensity, and then, without warning, she pressed her lips to his, soft, quick, determined. Before Colt could react, before he could even register the shock, darkness reeled him under again as his body gave out. When he woke the second time, the sun had risen. His vision steadied, the fire now just smoke, and she sat a few feet away, cleaning her knife like nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Colt pushed himself upright with a groan, but the memory hit him harder than any pain. He stared at her, stunned, throat tight. "Did you kiss me?" he blurted out, unable to hold back the disbelief curling through him. She looked up slowly, almost bored, almost daring him to question her. Her lips curved into a sly, unapologetic smirk, one that made Colt's pulse stumble. "You were fadding," she said, as if explaining basic survival. "I needed to make sure you were conscious or bring you back if you were." Colt's jaw dropped. That was not an answer, not even close. "So you kissed me while I was out?" he repeated, heat rising under his collar. She shrugged, wiping the blade. "I saved your life, Cowboy. Try saying thank you instead." Colt didn't know if he was furious, embarrassed, or weirdly intrigued. All he knew was she had turned his entire world sideways without breaking a sweat, and she didn't seem done with him yet. Because as Colt opened his mouth to argue, she stood and pointed toward the ridge above. Her face turned serious, sharp, almost calculating. "Someone sabotaged that trail," she said quietly. "It didn't collapse on its own." Colt felt the blood drain from his face. He followed her gaze, realizing the implications instantly. That wasn't bad luck. That was a warning, maybe even a trap. His breath deepened, fists tightening. "You know who did it?" he asked. She met his eyes with a calm that felt far too confident. "I know one thing," she said, stepping closer. "They're not done." Her voice dropped, a whisper that cut colder than the wind. "And they weren't trying to kill me." She lifted a finger, tracing the air between them. "They were trying to kill you." Colt froze, heart pounding. The ridge, the fall, the stranger who appeared at the perfect moment. Nothing was an accident, and she knew more than she let on. She leaned in, close enough for him to feel the heat of her breath. "So listen carefully, Cowboy," she murmured, "if you want to stay alive long enough to find out who wants you dead." Her eyes locked on his, unwavering. "You're gonna have to trust me." Colt didn't trust easily, and he sure as hell didn't trust strangers who kissed him unconscious and acted like they owned the sunrise. But something in her voice, in the way she squared her shoulders while scanning the ridge, made him pause. She wasn't guessing, she knew. And if someone was truly trying to kill him, then refusing help out of pride would make him a dead man walking. He rubbed his aching ribs and studied her carefully. "All right," he muttered. "Start talking. Who are you?" She slid her knife into its sheath with slow precision. "Name, Rowan Hale, and you've got bigger problems than a bruised ego." Rowan stepped up the rocky incline with a confidence that irritated him. Colt followed, wincing at the pain shooting down his side but refusing to show weakness. When they reached the broken trail, Rowan crouched and traced a finger along the cracked edge. "See this?" she asked. Colt leaned in. The dirt had been disturbed, not by nature, but by human hands. Blades had sliced away the supporting layer, weakening the ridge deliberately. Colt felt anger coil in his chest. "Someone came all the way out here to cut the path and send me over," Rowan nodded, "and they expected you to die in that ravine." She stood and faced him fully. "This wasn't random. Someone knows your roots." Colt frowned, thinking of anyone who might want him gone. Competitors, rustlers, bitter neighbors, but murder wasn't the sort of problem he usually had. "You seem awful calm about all this," he said. Rowan crossed her arms. "Because I've been tracking the same people for weeks." That stunned him. "Tracking? Why?" Rowan hesitated, glancing at the horizon before answering. "Because they hit my family's ranch first." Her jaw tightened. "They ambushed my father. He didn't survive." The air between them thickened. Colt's breath dropped heavy. He finally understood why she moved like someone sharpened by grief. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Rowan nodded once, then lifted her chin. "They won't do it again. Not to me, not to you." They walked the ridge till the trail curved into a small canyon. Rowan studied every mark, every loose stone. Colt stayed behind her, keeping his rifle ready. The silence stretched until Rowan stopped abruptly. She pointed at the dust, boot prints, several pairs, leading away from the ridge and into denser brush. "They left on foot," she said, "likely watching you for hours." Colt followed the direction of the tracks. They disappeared into a narrow valley known for ambushes. "If we go down there," Colt warned, "we're walking into a trap." Rowan smirked. "Then let's not walk. Let's make them think they trapped us." Her plan was reckless, but it was smart. They moved quietly through the canyon, keeping to the shadows and listening for movement. Birds stayed silent. The wind seemed to hold its breath. Colt gripped his rifle tighter, sweat beading on his neck. Rowan stepped ahead, signaling him to stop. She pointed at a cluster of rocks that didn't look natural. Colt recognized it immediately, an ambush blind. Someone had been waiting there, watching the ridge collapse, watching him fall. Fury burned through him hot and fast. Rowan crouched near the blind, picking up a discarded matchstick. "They left in a hurry," she whispered. Before Colt could respond, a sharp metallic click echoed behind them. He froze. Rowan turned slowly. 3 men stood at the canyon entrance, rifles raised, eyes cold. The one in front spat into the dust. "Should have died on the ridge, Maddox," he growled. Colt recognized him then. Wyatt Crowley, a disgraced ranch hand fired months ago for stealing cattle. Wyatt's jaw was tight with bitterness. "You took my livelihood," he snarled. "So I'm taking yours." Rowan stepped in front of Colt without hesitation, blade glinting at her hip. Big talk for a man too cowardly to fight face to face. Wyatt sneered. "Ain't my fight with you, girl." Rowan's voice dropped to a cold whisper. "It is now." She moved first, fast, precise, throwing a knife that struck one man's rifle, knocking it sideways. Colt fired a shot that cracked through the canyon, sending the men scrambling for cover. Wyatt ducked behind a boulder, screaming curses. Rowan grabbed Colt's arm and yanked him behind a rock just as a bullet whizzed past. "You good?" she asked. Colt nodded, chest heaving. "You?" Rowan grinned wildly. "Never better." Gunfire erupted, echoing like thunder. The canyon became a storm of dust and ricochets. Colt reloaded, firing strategically to push the men back. Rowan moved like smoke, silent, quick, calculating every angle. She retrieved her knife, flipping it with deadly accuracy. One of Wyatt's men rushed them, firing blindly. Colt stepped out, aiming steady, and shot the rifle clean from his hands. The man fled, disappearing into the brush. Rowan went after him, tackling him with a force that knocked the wind out of him. Colt turned, looking for Wyatt. He spotted him climbing the canyon wall, trying to escape. Colt sprinted after him despite the burning pain in his ribs. He grabbed Wyatt's collar and dragged him down, slamming him into the dirt. Wyatt struggled, face twisted with hate. "You ruined my life," he snarled. Colt pinned him down. "You did that yourself." Rowan arrived beside them, breathing hard. Wyatt glared up at her. "Your old man shouldn't have gotten in our way." Rowan's face changed. In one heartbeat, grief, rage, and restraint collided behind her eyes. She leaned close enough for Wyatt to tremble. "He protected what was his," she said. "Now I'm doing the same." They tied Wyatt and hauled him back toward the ranch, leaving the canyon of gunfire behind. Colt staggered from exhaustion, but Rowan walked beside him, steady as stone. She kept her hand near his arm every time his steps faltered, pretending not to notice when he leaned slightly for support. When they reached the open plains again, the wind swept over them like a cleansing breath. Wyatt muttered curses behind them, but neither Rowan nor Colt paid him any mind. Their silence wasn't strained, it was shared. Back at the Maddox ranch, the sheriff took Wyatt away, expression grim when he heard the full story. As the horses were being watered, Rowan stood by the corral fence, staring toward the fading sun. Colt approached her slowly. "You could stay a while," he said quietly. Rowan didn't look at him. "I wasn't planning on stopping." Colt stepped closer. "You saved my life." Rowan finally turned, her smirk returning, soft this time, tired but real. "Guess we're even," she said. Colt shook his head. "Not even close." She tilted her chin. "You planning on changing that cowboy?" Colt held her gaze, feeling something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Respect, gratitude. "Pull, maybe I am," he said. Rowan studied him, the storm in her eyes easing just a little. "Then you'd better heal fast," she replied, stepping past him. "We've got a lot of land, a lot of enemies, and a whole lot of unfinished business." Colt watched her walk toward the barn, the last light catching her silhouette. He realized then that she wasn't done with him, and he wasn't done with her either. The ridge had nearly killed him. Rowan Hale had saved him. But the story between them, that was just beginning.